Wait a few seconds. It'll be here, but we're going to, there we are, 10 seconds. All right, everybody, it's getting a little bit of a late start, so we're going to do the Ronald Reagan speech that was edited together to be pretty motivational. So here we go.
Stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. Mr. President, I want our fellow citizens to know how much you did to carry on this tradition. By your gracious cooperation in the transition process, you have shown a watching world that we are a united people, pledged to maintaining a political system which guarantees individual liberty to a greater degree than any other. And I thank you and your people for all your help in maintaining the continuity which is the bulwark of our republic. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else? So as we begin, let us take inventory. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government, which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed. It is my intention to curb the size and influence of the federal establishment and to demand recognition of the distinction between the powers granted to the federal government and those reserved to the states or to the people. All of us need to be reminded that the federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government. Now, so there will be no misunderstanding, it's not my intention to do away with government. It is rather to make it work with us, not over us, to stand by our side, not ride on our back. Government can and must provide opportunity, not smother it, foster productivity, not stifle it. If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. It is no coincidence that our present troubles parallel and are proportionate to the intervention and intrusion in our lives that result from unnecessary and excessive growth of government. It is time for us to realize that we're too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. We're not, as some would have us believe, doomed to an inevitable decline. I do not believe in a fate that will fall on us no matter what we do. I do believe in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing. So with all the creative energy at our command, let us begin an era of national renewal. Let us renew our determination, our courage, and our strength. And let us renew our faith and our hope. We have every right to dream heroic dreams. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. On the eve of our struggle for independence, a man who might have been one of the greatest among the founding fathers, Dr. Joseph Warren, President of the Massachusetts Congress, said to his fellow Americans, "Our country is in danger, but not to be despaired of. On you depend the fortunes of America. You are to decide the important question upon which rests the happiness and the liberty of millions yet unborn. Act worthy of yourselves." As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it, now or ever. Our forbearance should never be misunderstood. Our reluctance for conflict should not be misjudged as a failure of will. When action is required to preserve our national security, we will act. We will maintain sufficient strength to prevail if need be, knowing that if we do so, we have the best chance of never having to use that strength. Above all, we must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. Beyond those monuments to heroism is the Potomac River, and on the far shore, the sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David. They add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, "My Pledge," he had written these words: "America must win this war. Therefore, I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone." The crisis we're facing today does not require of us the kind of sacrifice that Martin Treptow and so many thousands of others were called upon to make. It does require, however, our best effort and our willingness to believe in ourselves and to believe in our capacity to perform great deeds, to believe that together we can and will resolve the problems which now confront us. And after all, why shouldn't we believe that? We are Americans.
All right. Thank you for joining us with Education by Ed. Ed, we have our guest speaker from last night listening in. Is he planning to talk or just listen?
Listen at
at this point, we'll open up after I get done on the religion point, because I want to hit this hard for people. Okay. I want to comprehend the real truth compared to the imitation that they live in religion of this country. Because Christianity is from a foreign country. It is not American. That's where this Miss Davis has it all wrong, thinking that she has a right to, and I don't support gay and lesbians and all that stuff. I'll be upfront with that right off the bat. But the Constitution gives each man and woman a right to have their rights not to be infringed, and so long as they don't cause personal or property damage to another living individual or property, man, woman, or child. And this is where people have got to start reading the Constitution, statute codes, and administrative rules, because administrative rules and the statutes apply to elected and public servants, registered church members, registered voters, in all immigration. Let's clarify it. It affects all immigration. And if you have a conflict, please go read the 1938 Foreign Agent Registration Act. That was put in place in World War II so we could stop the invasion that was coming through. We know that the Democrats pushed a lot of illegals in this country, as they still do today, because they want to do that for the birth certificate funding through Social Security Administration. Which technically, if you do the research on Social Security Administration, when it was originally created, it was a private contract for lawful Americans, and it even says lawful American in the original paperwork. Doesn't say immigration, foreigners, other countries, anything like that in it. And in 1937, and I put this out in our letter that we put out with the flyer when I put out for the talk shows, in 1937, they stated that Social Security was a Constitution right because it didn't go against the Constitution. It was ensuring lawful Americans had a backup plan. That's exactly what I put in the state of Oregon for lottery funds, because I'm looking at 25% of lottery funds to come back to lawful bloodline Americans, not immigration, not foreigners. They're not entitled. They come to our country. It's a privilege they come to our country. And if you actually read the original immigration law, 1770, 1793, 1812, and when they were doing Ellis Island, 1903 and 1913, and the administration rules of 1933 of Ellis Island, it states it. But that's the one thing, is that most people don't want to read what the law says. Statute codes and administrative rules apply to all elected and public servants. They do not apply to we the people. And once you comprehend that that's the way it's truly written, and you read the structure of it, and you have it in your hands, and the one thing is that I do recommend, if you're in a county clerk's office or stuff, you have it, ask them to certify copy it, if they will. Because they're supposed to certify anything for any American. That's the way the law reads. And I'm getting ready to put a statement on that, and I'll be in our UCC stuff coming up for next Saturday in the talk show that we're going to do on UCC coming up. Because people need to know the separation of lawful and legal. Legal is British administrative law, and that goes back to the contract that the Americans have of 1871 with the British Vatican. I do put out a cartoon out all the time that where the judge says to the guy that's being hauled in by the police officer, states in that very clearly that you have to realize, sir, that me and your pastor are one and the same. When you realize that the court system sends 20 to 25% of everything that's paid in administrative rules, fines, tickets, whatever you want to call them, registration fees, they all go to the Queen of to the Vatican through the Queen of England. The Queen of England gets her percentage off of it, and then sends it to the Vatican. This has actually been proven. So when you look at the facts, and that was the one thing that was brought up last night,
is that a lot of people have different opinions or different education, but you have to research the facts yourself, bounce them around, and believe in what is the facts. You have to go by facts. You can't go by hearsay. And that's what Southern was talking about last night. You can't do hearsay. And that is the one thing a lot of people get involved in hearsay instead of doing the research and facts and proving what somebody says is right or wrong. That's why I really want to do the UCC code next weekend, because I have a whole bunch of stuff that I'm going to be bringing up. We're going to have a lot of stuff put up on the new.Oregon Trackers site, and I'm going to try to get some posted on the Facebook sites we have. So that way people could actually read that. And even it says it in the Black Law Dictionary. Black Law Dictionary is very specifically on that. And that even goes to the 10th edition. You can look at page 1593, 160. This goes to your autograph and signatures. So this is the whole point of knowing what the truth is. And remember, your court system and judges live by the Black Law Dictionary. Opinions by court systems are opinions. Opinions are like diapers, need to be changed regularly. That's where it was brought up last night, dealing with the Trading with the Enemy Act. Executive Order 2040 states very clearly, any citizen, national, that is an enemy to the states. And the states is capital states, not lower states. When you see lower state, that is the corporation state. When you see a capital state of state Oregon or Colorado or Texas, you're talking the organic constitution. When you see these state and this state also too, you want to use this state in the organic terminology. But this state, when it has the small s, that means the corporation. And this is the point that was really frustrates me with Kimberly, because she's sitting there trying to tell everybody, this is my constitution right that I don't have to accept to file these paperwork for the disabled and elderly and gays or whatever she wants to say. And when she made this public, far as I'm concerned, she put herself on a chopping block because she says that she was trained by her mother. So obviously, yeah, she was trained by her mother, but not very well to know the circumstances of the truth. I mean, this is facts. This ain't hearsay. Because statute codes and administrative rules do not apply to lawful bloodline Americans. That is so real and so simple. And this is the point that when you comprehend these things and realize it, that's why under the 1938 Foreign Agent Registration Act, and I do put this out in our letters, and I do ask people to ask their elected and public servants to see if they're registered. If they're not, it's a mandatory felony. Because it says, by the judge, attorneys, clerks of all elected and public servants. That means anybody who gets paycheck from the public servants, anybody gets a check from the state of corporation, has to register under the 1938 Foreign Agent Registration Act. It's mandatory filing. Perhaps the most important statement here is largely enclosed, the 1938 law, Foreign Agent Registration Act. All public servants, officials, congressmen, politicians, judges, attorneys, law enforcement officers, state and their various agencies, anybody has to be registered, and that includes immigration. It's a mandatory felony. And you can look this up yourself, USC 286-263A. And it goes, and also, too, that under this order creates treason. The Delegation Order 91 is treason when they go against their own administrative rules. So it's very important to comprehend this stuff. And I got one that I want to read here to you on religion. This is a good one, and this is done by Truman. Okay, Truman, when he started doing all his crazy stuff. And he's got it as capital state. Truman says in one of his statements, Neither Christian or other systems of religion is part of the law of the state, capital state. So that means you have a constitutional right to your religion. Thus, the statute, codes, and administrative rules upon which define, relies, prohibitly common labor on the Sabbath cannot stand for a moment as law. And the state is the sole foundation, was the Christian duty to keep the day holy, and its solely motive is to enforce observance of that duty. So when people get into their Christian structure or Buddhism or whatever religion you want to claim you are, all right, you have the right to do that, but it's not to be part of the state corporation. I mean, it's not to be part of the organic state constitution. And if you read your treaties that each state had before the states became a corporation with the British government, and you have to realize the federal government is the British government. It clearly states that when you type in federal government, it'll come up Britain. And that's a fact. And as the Pope would say, he controls all the government. And he's got publications on that worldwide. He says, and if you type in Pope government, it'll come up that the Pope is the government. That's why when it comes to religion, people have a right to have their religious beliefs. But they don't have a right to dictate to us how our religion is to be taught, to be believed in. They don't. And when you pledge allegiance to the state corporation, people don't comprehend this. If you're national or citizen, means owing a permanent allegiance to the state. A person who, through non-citizen of the state, owes permanent allegiance to the United States Incorporation. So if you don't file your instruments and claim your sovereignty or sovereign, and make sure that you get it either publicized in the newspaper by an affidavit, so if they ever challenge you to go to court, the law says that an attorney, a clerk, working for the government, lawyer, anybody in the agency is a public employee cannot write an affidavit going into court against any living man or woman. That's federal law. That's in the Black Law Dictionary too. And that's the point that I try to make to people all the time so people comprehend the structure of their religious belief and what is their religion. Okay, fine. It's like this lady, and I brought this up. This is the fourth week we've been talking about her. She brings up, I'm a Christian now. Well, my question is, she's been married 4 times. Did she make amends to her previous 4 husbands? That's a good point right there. If you're going to claim you're a Christian, aren't you supposed to make amends? That's part of what they call that, the 12 steps of being a so-called alcoholic or drug addict, because you can't blame booze or drugs for your responsibility. And so you comprehend, attorney license is a fraud. 1957, it is located for all to read in the following pages. Volume 351, United States, page 238, 239. In the United States reports, here's the the quote from that case. This is actually from congressional records. And this is where people have got to realize that these things do mean what it says. Another point, too, is that, she's got an attorney that she's trying to steal herself. Well, she's a corporation, so she's a public servant. She has to go by administrative rules. That's the law. But here it is. This is what Kennedy did when he went and fought the Foreign Agent Registration Act, John F. Kennedy. It is clearly established the principle of law for any attorney must represent a corporation. So when you go in with your birth certificate and you haven't corrected the status of your name, you're going in by a birth certificate that says you are the corporation, because an attorney has a right to represent the corporation. Doesn't matter what you think. It is being incorporated into the creature of law, and attorneys represent an artificial identity must appear with the corporation charter. This is law. This is what John F. Kennedy did before he was assassinated. So what this point is saying that he has to have the charter of the corporation. So if you're going by your birth certificate, write the charter for your birth certificate and make sure it's filed and certified. So if you ever end up in court that they force an attorney on you, you have to represent the charter. So you got a charter to your birth certificate. So you're working on comprehending how this game works, because it is technically, in a sense, a game. It's a game of words. It's a game of legal versus lawful. Lawful is constitution law. Legal is statute, codes, and administrative rules. Like when I go into Walmart and they try to tell me, well, we need to see an ID when you return something. I'm not a part of your corporation. Where does it say I have to show you an ID? Well, they tell me, well, that's because we say that in our records. Well, I don't care what it says in your records. Does it say that I'm a member of your corporation? Well, no. And I've been through this before, returning a few things at Walmart. And they're like, well, no. And I said, okay, then call your manager up, and then we'll call your attorneys. Well, then we're just going to give you a gift card and just get out of our way. Okay. Because, most of the times when I did return anything, 99.9% of the time, I just want to exchange it for something that was working compared to something that died, even though it was new. And a person acting as attorney for a foreign principal must be registered to act on the principal's behalf. See, Agents Registration Act, United States 22 United States Code 612. See, they already have all this stuff written into the codes, the UCC codes. So that's why I'm saying you go through the UCC codes and you start putting that. And this goes to Victor Rubinsky. He was a Jewish lawyer that went after John F. Kennedy, and that was case 376 U.S. 605. Failure to file the Foreign Agent Registration Act goes directly to jurisdiction, lack of standing to be before the court. So, and this is one thing. It is a felony pursuit, Title 18 U.S.C. 219.951, conflict of interest. Not a conflict of interest, a conflict of law, interest, and alleged the obvious. So, there's a slight conflict, but also, too, in the 1938 Foreign Agent Registration Act, clearly states all have to be registered. So that's where the attorney didn't have John F. Kennedy's corporation for his birth certificate when he walked into court when he went after him. So, he's a corporation by your birth certificate. It means that. I've got a flyer, cartoon, or a deal I put out with a lady looking at a pregnancy test stick. And it comes up positive, and she goes, oh, shit, now I'm giving birth to another corporation. But see, that's the one thing, the beauty of it, on New.org and Trackers, we do have a deal on there to claim your lawful bloodline status and to claim your property. Your child is your property. And if you don't claim your property, and this is where Southern was correct, the state claims it after 30 days because that goes under the vessel voyage law. So if you don't claim your property in 30 days, that's how cops get away with it when they steal money from people and they don't get a certificate or a note. But see, when they go to court, they usually get a slip says that they got this type of money in their hands. Well, that is evidence they took the money. But it is comprehending how to use that and fight it in the court system. Because remember, they write these stuff up to twist the facts. So this way we don't comprehend the way they're doing it. They want to keep putting you in their jurisdiction. And you don't want to put yourself in their jurisdiction. That is the main point, is to get yourself out of their jurisdiction. You don't want to be part of the foreign corporation's jurisdiction. And they do this deliberately. I have a structure that, I've been on several other talk shows that I've been on several other talk shows that the other day I was on a talk show with a lady going through a deal that was arguing back and forth on a grand jury compared to the attorneys and lawyers. And then she's trying to say to everybody on the talk show that the lawyers and attorneys have complete immunity, which is a lie. If they violate their oath of office and you prove it, they are liable. That's by federal law. That is including in the 1938 Foreign Agent Registration Act, Title 91. See, this is the one thing that this gets me frustrated with sometimes when people do different things and they don't get the facts on these things of what they're talking about. And that's the one thing that, like I said, we're going to be bringing up a lot of this up next Saturday on UCC, because it's like this lady is trying to say that these people don't have a right to get married. And like I said, I'm going to repeat myself. I do not support gay and lesbian. That is their decision, not choice. They make a decision in that. A choice gives you an out of excuse. A decision means you have to be liable for your actions. That's why when people say, I'm a drug and alcoholic, and it was my choice to drink, and booze controlled me, not my own mind. And that is the one point that people do not comprehend, that booze and drugs don't control your mind controls you, because if you ever did drugs or booze the first time, any time you did booze or drugs the first time, it was a happy moment. Every single time. It was a happy moment. And until depression took over, once depression took over, then you allowed it to control you, because every time a man or a woman gets depressed, and sometimes teenagers, preferably not, but, you know, all of a sudden you get depressed, and so you go to the booze or the drugs for your emotional escape. And this is where people don't comprehend that. And I've talked to people, I've got people off of drinking and drugs very simple. I went out and poisoned them on the booze. I drank with them 2-1. I still was able to get home. I got up in the morning and pounded the pots and pans. Come on, you want to be stupid? Let's talk stupid. And they get upset with me. Why did you wake me up? Well, shit, why do you think? That's the whole point of these things. And that's the one thing, is that when you start getting people to realize how, what, why, and how, and it's bringing people in those positions back to the original point of when they started drinking or doing drugs. What was the purpose of the happiness at the moment? What was the purpose that turned into depression? Once they can start recognizing and separating the facts of the two things in their minds, because remember, booze and alcohol addiction technically is in the mind. All drug and alcohol programs will tell you that, and I've been through around several of them, not myself personally. I have attended them as an observer to just listen to what was going on, and I've been asked to go in with people who are drug and alcohol programs going through their process, and sure, I'll go in. And I've even been with some named musicians and stuff like this, which I'm not going to get into, you know, some of the past of who I worked with and things like that. That doesn't matter. The very point matters of how it works compared to what we think it is. And so I'm going to be putting this one up. I got this one, Congressional Government Constitution Anointed. So I got some research to do on that one here this week too. And I'll put that up on the United States for America. Elected and Public Servants Oversight. So I'll put it up on the structure of New.org and trackers. So I'll put it on Civil Rights Lawful Bloodline Americans, as well as Recall Cape Brown. So I'll get those put up here in a few minutes. But I mean, this is the one point, is it's all about education and knowing what your education is. And if you don't know what your education is, when you go to court, don't speak. Take a pen and paper, write down what the or you can call them a judge. I don't sit there and call some of these people a judge, because I don't allow them to judge me. And when you go in, that's the same thing, a pope or a minister or church pastor, anybody in religion, when you go to them, that's what they do, is they do judgment on you. They do a judgment to see what your judge of liability is for the religion that you belong to. And that's basically when you go to these courts. They're going after you for judgment of the religion of their belief in courts, because they are filed under the Vatican. So once you start comprehending that these are the real facts, how the court system works, that's why I recommend a movie called Interstate 60. And I recommend people watch that movie twice. It pretty much lays out the court system once you comprehend it. And when I watched it for the first time, I was shocked. I watched it a while back ago, and it caught me. And then all of a sudden, I had people starting to send it to me email. Did you see this? Did you see that? And of course I did. But it's like that's the one thing is passing this stuff on, so it's proper education. And that is the point that we have to do with one another is make sure we're getting proper education. There's a lot of people out there with different opinions, different structures, different thoughts, but it's stepping out of the movie, as I always say, watch the production. See who's winning, who's doing what, who's being successful. And it's like this lady that I've got to finish, I got a letter I'm sending to the 6th District Court on her, because I believe she should go to prison for violating her oath of servitude. She doesn't have a right to stand on her religion's beliefs because nobody attacked her religion. She is an elected and public servant. She's a clerk. She's a servant. She's not entitled to her religious belief on the job. Which I find it interesting. She's got the same gentleman who is the gay party that is running against her for her job in the upcoming election. Of course, he doesn't want to listen to anything. I try to give him information, but he's one of those that he knows everything. And so I'm letting him go. Because, you know, I mean, like I said, I don't support gay and lesbians, but he just proved to me why I don't. Because they don't give a shit. All they care about is themselves and their way of thinking. I have been on court cases in the state of Oregon dealing with gay and lesbians that were trying to adopt and take kids out of this state to other states, which I do not support. You know, because that bloodline has to go stay in the bloodline of that family. And it shall stay in that bloodline, as I say, in my opinion, or my factual knowledge, shall, if they file their paperwork correctly. Because they're not entitled to sit there and rape, rob, and pillaging. That's why I was so pleased to see Donald Trump come out with the human trafficking bill, executive order, a week before Christmas. And people have to realize an executive order only applies to elected and public servants, registered church members, and all military. And to my knowledge, it technically doesn't apply to state militias, because state militias under the capital state, not the small state, they're supposed to be of the lawful people. Which I'm still doing research on that one, so that way I could confirm my own statement. And I know I had a court case in the state of Oregon that stated that years ago, and we dealt with that in 99. Yeah, it was 1999 up at the Capitol. And so it was like, that's where it comes down to. And so knowing when you go to court is knowing what the state means. State corporation, or are you going by the organic state? This is where this Kimberly Davis cannot claim that she's going by the by the private law of the organic constitution because she's an employee. As an employee, you relinquish all your rights. You're under basically military law at that point. You lose all your rights. And that's where people do not comprehend that one whatsoever. So, I don't know, we got a visiting dog from the neighborhood. But that's where people need to start learning about how the Constitution, United States commercial codes work. And a lot of all your United States commercial codes come from the Black Law Dictionary. I do recommend that if you want to get a Black Law Dictionary, first off, get the Black Law Dictionary, the 10th edition, and then the second one you want is the 1st edition, because you will see a lot of changes from the 1st to the 10th, because remember, lawyers rewrite this stuff. That's their job. The state corporation is registered and it is filed as a patent. So when they pass administrative rule, which you are told that's a bill, And a bill is a bill of lading, so that way you have to pay a bill for somebody else's structure. I gotta change phones here for a minute. So when they pass on the bill, you're getting a bill that they're saying they want you to pay. And that's what a Senate bill, a House bill is all about. They want you to pay this structure for them. When they pass these bills for Social Security and state funding, we the people are supposed to get that money, not the corporations. That's where people don't comprehend, because the corporations, state corporations, they take all the money that they pass, and especially they rob and rape Social Security for the kids under Social Security Act Title IV. They're not entitled to this stuff. And this is where people have got to come together and comprehend these truths and facts and tell the truth to their children. Because if we're not educating the children, what future does this country have when it really comes down to it? That's the point, that people don't stand up. What future does this country have? And people have got to get that through their heads. Because the future of this country relies on people knowing their militia laws and knowing the Constitution first, and then studying the UCC Code Administrative Rules and knowing how to use the laws that are there. I mean, the one thing is that in 1963, when they did International United States Commercial Code, or Uniform Commercial Code, that was in 1963 when that passed. Prior to that, there wasn't one. 1947 is when they started doing United States Mail, where they did a zip code. Zip code was to mark you in military standings of the area dealing with military maps. And that's the one thing that all this stuff is factual. You can do the research. I've got it. We've got more and more going on New.Org Tracker's website and educating people on this stuff. And that is the point when you're getting this stuff. And I tell people, research. When somebody tells you something or gives you advice or gives you a template, get 4 or 5 templates, read them, study them, figure out the best one that works for you. Even though you might have to tear one apart and put another one together with the this, that, and the other thing, you know, you put it together to fit your needs and your circumstances at the time of what you're going through. Yeah, I'm working on several, and that's the one thing that next Sunday, a week from tonight, we're going to go over property taxes and we're going to go over mortgages. And that's the one thing that I'm going to say for Sunday night, because that's going to be an interesting thing to open people's eyes up, including with the Black Law Dictionary, including with the banking acts, the way they're written compared to what you think they are. But the thing about religion is so disturbing, because everybody goes, and I've been watching this all over the internet, we got to put God in to control this. We got to put in basically the Bible into the church. Why do you think they said separate church and state? And that was state with a capital S, not a small s of the corporation. That was of the state of the organic constitution, because you don't want any religion dictating to anybody in the house. Illinois right now has a special committee in Illinois dictating the House and Senate with Muslim law, Sharia law. It's a fact. Type it in, learn it. Illinois is trying to shove Sharia law through the House and Senate in Illinois. That's why Illinois, 2015, passed the administrative Senate bill that if a cop breaks your door down and comes in your home, you can shoot him. They actually passed an administrative bill that says if a cop breaks your door down, you can shoot him to protect you. Because in Sharia law, you don't have a right. If you got a group coming in, basically called democracy, you're supposed to bow your head to Sharia law. You're not supposed to react. That's what we're getting right now, basically, with some of the police. And I would like to also, too, thank those elected and public servants who are honoring their oath. Also, too, a special thanks to Facebook. If it wasn't for Facebook, a lot of people wouldn't be connected. Don't forget that, folks. And you could always send him, Zimmerman, educational information. Don't sit there and slam him. because, you know, you got to remember, he was grown up by a corporation. He is learning different things. If you watch what he did in Hawaii on some of the properties, he even gave some of the property that he took back to the Hawaiians, and they're still bitching. And it's like, I've talked to some of the people over there. I said, how come you didn't go over and really talk to them instead of just start attacking to them? How come you didn't go over and work out some type of situation with them? And all I hear is, we don't have to. He's supposed to abide by our law. And I said, okay, so you come into my house, and you're going to tell me your law ain't going to work. I mean, you know, you allowed that. The Hawaiian people allowed those grave sites and stuff to be sold. Before it was even sold, they never filed their paperwork on the structure. All I heard for years when I was doing that 5-7 years ago was, it's common law, it's common knowledge. Read what common law is. Common law, even in the Black Law Dictionary, says the judge runs common law. The judge is the court. That's why when you go to court, people say, well, I told the judge that he doesn't have rights to do this, and he can't do that. And I'm going, did you actually put it in writing before you got to court and file it? Well, no, I don't have to do that. Oh, well, no wonder you got put in jail. You're sitting there telling the judge to screw off, and you didn't prove a damn thing. All you did was hearsay evidence in a courtroom. Because when you speak in a courtroom, it's hearsay evidence. If you file it, and preferably when you file it, get it stamped by the clerk. And I have done that, filed my court proceedings and got them stamped by the clerk of the state. Of course, they said state of Oregon at the time, but I mean, I'm still learning different other things myself. So that's why I want to pass the knowledge, what I'm learning down to you, so this way you do it properly. I paid for my mistakes, other people around me that have paid for their mistakes, and we're learning the real process compared to what it is, because there is two processes in this country. One is called the 1871 Vatican Constitution that goes back to the 1215 Magna Carta from England, and the Treaty of 1213, that is your religious treaty, from a foreign country. Yes, it was adopted in the federal Supreme Court, because the federal government is the British government under the Vatican. I know. We have proven that. We put affidavits in. Me and David even did an affidavit back in 2014 when Judge Scalia was assassinated on the separation of lawful and legal by their own congressional records, proving immigration is privileged. There is no such thing as a dream act. Because when you wake up from a dream, I hate to tell you, now you got to deal with reality. So, and that's the one thing that when it comes down to public elected service, and then you're wondering, because in the 1980s, because once upon a time, you used to go into the courts, and the court clerk would always help you write your paperwork. And then a few times the clerk helped people write the paperwork. The people didn't write the way the clerk suggested it to them, because the clerk cannot give legal advice. Neither do we. We're not lawyers or attorneys or anything. We don't give advice. We give thoughts or opinions. And remember, opinions are like diapers, need to be changed regularly. It's up to you to decide what's true or not. But when the clerks were helping people with their court cases, a couple people filed the court cases wrong, so they end up losing, and a couple of them went to jail, so they end up suing the clerk, the county clerk. This is back, the biggest case was $2.3 million, I believe it was, and that was back in 1984. And when they won that case against the clerk, that's when the clerk started going slowly through national. You know, it took them 10 years to get it across the country, because that happened in the Midwest. That's when the clerks couldn't help you with paperwork. The clerks had to start sitting, I can't do this, I can't help you. I had to be silent. Some of us are old enough when we used to go to the clerk's office or even the voter's office that they would help you. And then all of a sudden it came to the point where they said, we're not taking liability. And I've actually had a few of them say that to me a few years back. Well, we can't do this or we can't do that because we're not taking liability. And, of course, I had to say, well, okay, I comprehend. I agree with that one. But it came from court cases because people filed their paperwork wrong. So because you, a man or a woman, does not comprehend the entire structures of their paperwork doing, That's why there's tons of YouTube videos on the internet. Watch these things. Take 3 or 4 different pieces from one to another. Take your pen and paper or your pencil and paper and write it down. And if you want to know the legal terms, pencil and paper, or originally was the old wet ink with a quill that was written. And that quill and wet ink is technically the official legal way, but they allow pencil and paper. And typing is allowed today. That was done in 1939 under administrative rules. So, I mean, and these are the points that, you know, that is looking at this stuff, comprehending how these things work, and not blaming others because you didn't comprehend it. Pick up a law dictionary. Bovier's or Black Law. Pick up Webster Dictionary, and there's another one too. There's 3 major dictionaries, and I do suggest people read them because some of them say similar things, but they mean a different word in the way they write it in the dictionary. And it is knowing the dictionaries to go through so that way you have a correct dictionary, or take 2 or 3 dictionaries to make sure it says the same thing, or cross-reference, always. And it's too bad this Kimberly Davis just didn't do her job because, see, when she made this thing go public about the gay and lesbian issues, and I can't do it with my religion, that makes me wonder what she's saying behind closed doors about other people go in that courtroom, or the county clerk's office, I mean, and even file their property paperwork or file anything in the clerk's office when they're filing in the clerk. What else is she saying behind closed doors? What is she saying to family members, people on the street or at the bar or at church? And see, that's the one thing that is pretty sad about churches and stuff like that, because people go to these churches and you always hear them speak ill of somebody when they don't even know the truth about the man or woman or even child. People make up things. It's like the old saying is that you start out with one man or woman or child and you go around a circle at 20 of them. And when the 20th man, woman, or child gets it, they don't even know what it was originally said because everybody changed it. And a person, an individual, is the same thing by Black Law Dictionary and by a court system. That's why I don't use citizen, national, individual. Inhabitant is the same thing. If you're an inhabitant in the state, you're a citizen. I picked that up after a few instruments I wrote that I was an inhabitant, and all of a sudden when I did a little further research, including in Black Law Dictionary, I went, uh-oh, dumb idiot, dumb shit, you made a big mistake here. So I'm glad on my paperwork, I put in my disclosure on my paperwork that I'm the only one who could alter my paperwork and change it. The city, county, and state does not have authority, and that's why I recommend people do that. City, county, and state and the federal government cannot own land. That's by Black Law Dictionary and federal law. That's been proven in more than one court case. And banks can't even own land. And I've actually got the court case and the banking administrative rules from the federal government on that. And that's what I plan on getting in the mortgage structure next Sunday, to bring these things out so people can sit there and reference these things and look at these things. So the whole thing comes down to is being properly educated to the best of one's ability. And one's around you, always take 2 or 3 opinions, bounce them around through others, listen. That's the main point. Always listen before you speak. That was the one thing my grandfather said when I was growing up. Always listen before you speak. Of course, I didn't figure that one out until like teen years. Because I was always one of those that would jump off and da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, and I had an incident one afternoon, and all of a sudden it was like, duh, that thought came into my head where Grandpa said, listen before you speak. Because sometimes when somebody talks, we don't listen to the end of the story or the end of the circumstances, and we jump to conclusions in the first structure of what their sentence is or the first paragraph, so we jump to it. I mean, I've dealt with people on different cases in the last week, and they're trying to tell me their story, and I said, no. Right now, let me send you the information. I want you to, they told me the briefing of their story, and I said, that's good. Then they want to get into it. No, don't get into it with me. You have to write that story down. You have to write the facts to prove the facts in what you're trying to explain to me. I will send you the information you need. Once you get that and you comprehend it, then we'll go over your case. But I'm not going to start going over your case or do this with you now, because you're just going to sit there and try to argue with me about what things without comprehending what you're reading first. And I do recommend everybody watching that movie Interstate 60 first. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor up. I guess, we could bring Southern in first. And then we'll get into some things on this one. But remember, your religious beliefs, the Constitution gives you the right of freedom of religion. Doesn't give you the right to preach your religion and tell somebody else how to believe in your structure, how to believe in the way you believe in your Bible, or to believe in your structure of the people around you in your church. It says freedom of religion. So that means every man and woman, I don't believe in the Bible, and I tell that people bluntly. And I've had a couple people that have, maybe might have to intrigue me to go back on a few things in the Bible. But I will never believe in it because it came from England. I believe in the Great Spirit, Mother Earth, and native law. You know, the dirt, the soil, the trees. I could see that. I could taste that. I know what's going on around me. But when it comes to foreign laws and foreign books, some things I might have to visit on. They might have some points there that, some of them have been brought up to me, and I'm going, okay. Well, that's the point of having an open mind, to be realistic instead of being closed-minded. You have to be realistic with yourself in life. So, anyhow, let's go ahead and open up the floor.
Hey, Mr. Ed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You got a lot of good stuff, but let me say something. All right. 1861, under the Lieber Code,
yep,
all the laws in this country were suspended, as well as the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
You can look this up. Paul Ryan has clearly stated that they're going to reinstate the Constitution 5 separate occasions. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is happening, we think, right now. Second thing, after the Civil War, you need to get in, especially, start with Florida Constitution. Everything changed in the state constitutions. The right of jury nullification, was removed from these state constitutions. All right? These did not become juries, all right, under the law of the land. The law of the land was brought here from England. It is the Magna Carta, trial by jury. Okay? It's in the Constitution that all trials will be by jury, not with jury. There's a big difference. All right? A military jury is called a panel. All right? In a constitutional jury, all right, the people, all right, hold a grand jury. All right? I don't know if you ever heard of it. The case is called Williams versus the United States. Get into that constitutional annotated. It has a very good section in there, many, many pages of case law on the grand jury. All right? Now, the second thing, these are courts of fact. They were turned into courts of fact after the Civil War. All right? Fact. Edward Johnson was wearing a blue shirt, all right, on a red shirt Friday. This is how you're being brought into these courts. Trust me on this. Okay? Mm-hmm. I've been in too many of them, sat there and watched it, where they an example, I don't know about Oregon. Florida, they bring people in for panhandling. I don't care what case law you put in, you're guilty of panhandling. Because why? Were you doing this panhandling? Yes. Then you're guilty. Even though got a list of case law a mile long that says panhandling is a protected constitutional right. This is how we're losing in these courts, because we're not really understanding that these courts are not operating with law. Right? They're operating with case law that they make. All right?
Correct.
Now, under courts of fact, all right, you have to dispel the fact, which you can't do. This is why we have so many people in our prisons, all right, and being ran to this court. After the Civil War, when they suspended the Constitution and the laws, they created something called public order crimes. You need to look that definition up. A public order crime is anything they say, anything that's against the public order. Edward Johnson is out watering his lawn on Saturday. The people don't like it. It's against the public order, right? That's the only law they're making right now. It's public order crimes, right? That's what everybody's getting arrested on this. They don't understand it, right? But the public, you need to become more familiar with that definition: public order crimes. Okay, you're going to find out a whole lot of what's going on in these courts falls under that definition. This is, like I said last night, this is all military at this moment.
Right, and I got you on that, and I believe it was Reagan who ended martial law through Congress.
Nope.
I'll have to refer. That's what I'm looking for right now, because I believe that was done by Reagan.
Well, there was a catch. You're talking the states of national emergency, okay?
Yeah, national emergency only when we're being attacked, not when we're attacking another country.
Yeah, under the states of national emergency. But there was a catch, and I'll have to look it up for you. All right, in that law that did away with it, with most of the states of national emergency, it did not do away with an 1861 Lieber Code, and it did not do away with the 1933 state of emergency. Those remained, and nobody knew about it. Okay? This is the problem they got now. They're trying to shift, all right, from a military government, all right, to a civilian type government. And they have not run a civilian government in this country in 100 and something years, possibly 200. Given my research all the way back to 1775. But in these courts, all right, people got to understand what they're walking into. These courts cannot try you, all right, on an ex parte mulligan. So they became courts of fact. All right, like I said, fact. Were you eating a hamburger on a Fish Friday? Fact, yes, you're guilty. I sat there and watched this. Too many people go to jail for non-crimes. Okay? Because they're using this stuff called public order law. And you definitely need to make yourself familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that public order law allows them to make anything illegal. All right, no matter violate the Constitution. I've gotten into this really deep. They can make any rule they want against public order. Okay, and a lot of people fail to know. They don't know about this, and they go in there. They take the statutes, they take the codes, they take all this. It doesn't apply to you for number one. It's copyrighted for them for number two.
Right.
You can't use this stuff. All right, but they basically done. All right, and you can look it up. It's a part of statute. They copyrighted the laws of England that came here. All right, the common law. I gave it a case law last night. Called law of the land is supposed to be strictly trial by jury. Period. All right, they copyrighted that, and they created a law for themselves for simulating a legal process. You need to look that up in your state or Florida. And that's where the problem is at. Everything legal that you do under that law is illegal. So basically what they have done, for all practical purposes, and I hate to say this, is they took away your right of self-defense and due process because they copyrighted it. This is why you can go into these courtrooms with child protective services and mortgage foreclosures and child support and ask for a jury trial, and the judge will look and say, no, you're not getting one. Okay? He knows the secrets. All right? It's we that need to learn these secrets. All right? And to bring paperwork into that court to expose this. A simple piece of paperwork, all right, that people need to learn to write, it's a declaratory judgment. Ask the judge the question. What laws are you using? What are my rights? Okay? A lot of times these judges won't answer them. But you need to put a little clause in there that if he doesn't answer it, you reserve the right, all right, to sue him for the answer. Because that is part of the due process of law. He has to make rulings on this stuff. They don't want to do it. I got one that's a kicker, and I put it before a judge before, and you know they look at me like, "Are you crazy? I'm not answering this." But it's point blank.
Yeah, I got a couple things I'm going to be bringing up here on the internet as soon as my internet comes back, because I'm fighting that again. I'll bring a couple things back to the comments that you brought up to. And the one thing that I always like to use in my instrument is silence. And I'm going to read that to you here in a minute as soon as my computer comes back up. Because I always put this in all my paperwork, because it's a federal administrative rule and congressional record. When they use the word, when they don't respond, you use that in it, so that way silence is a recognition of your facts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where people don't get this for not using certain things when they do their paperwork. There are certain major words that you want to put in your paperwork so that way it stops any conflict of interest. And you got a valid point there, and that's what I do is I like to put the stuff in there to shut the judge up. Because when a judge won't respond, it's like I've had it where I've had judges that will tell me, oh, damn, I hate my computer when it does that. Just lost everything I had open. I hate it when a judge will tell you that he can't answer those questions. And then when he can't answer those questions, that puts a terror into people's eyes sometimes, which I find interesting. When he says he can't answer those questions, then you say, well, if you can't answer those questions, then I have no business being here. And that's where people are afraid to bring that part up. They're afraid to stand up for themselves in court. And that's the one thing I've noticed. Haven't you noticed that yourself?
Yeah. It's intimidating. Their intent is to intimidate and cower you. Okay? Mm-hmm. I'm going to try to find a video. Okay? The guy made it, I think it's about 2 hours long. All right? If I remember, I'm going to try to find this. It was on YouTube a couple of years ago. You need to watch this court. Everybody needs to watch this. This gentleman is walking you through step by step what is going on in these courtrooms. When I say step by step, I mean step by step. The gentleman that put this out here has over 40 years in law. When I say 40 years, he was not the student, he was the professor at a major law college. This video will hammer it home because right off the bat, he shows you the military flags and explains the military flags to you. He explains step by step, because when you watch the video, he'll go for a few minutes and stop, and he'll say, what did you just see? Okay? And then he's telling you what they're doing, why they're doing it, and everything. I'm going to try to find that video again, okay? Because it is one unbelievable video. And try to get it to you, okay, Ed?
Okay. Anyhow, silence can only be equated with fraud, where there is a legal or moral duty to speak, or when it is inquiry left unanswered would be internationally misleading, or revenue system is based on the good faith of the volunteer taxpayers should be able to expect the same from the government in enforcement and collective activities. It is the case, we hope, that our message is clear. This is a sort of deception we are not to be tolerated, and if this is routinely, it should be corrected immediately. That is United States versus T-Well, 550 FTD 297299. Also see Pruden, Prudden, 424 F291021 1023, and the other court case on this one is Carmen versus Bowen, 648 93227-14. So when you're putting your paperwork into these men and women and they are being silenced, they've already said that they can't answer the question, so they can't even do nothing a bit further on it. And that's where you want to be able to make sure that you comprehend these things. I'm going to get into this other one, where the law of the land, finally the Supreme Court says he is owing nothing to public so long as he does not trespass upon their rights. A sovereign individual does not have to pay taxes if he or she discuss. That's Hale versus Hinkle versus Run of the Mill Attorney. And I've got this, I put this out in all my letters, and has the case of Hale versus Hinkle with the Supreme Court decision. So it means that you're not to pay voluntary taxes if you don't want to. And I even have the law and the congressional record that the 16th Amendment was never passed, never ratified. And you could actually go on YouTube video and type in IRS director says all taxes are voluntary. You've heard that one, haven't you? You still there?
Yeah.
I didn't hear you.
I said, yes, I certainly have.
Yeah. So, but that's the whole point is what we're saying, folks, is know the separation of difference. Do your research. If you don't do your research, you cannot complain when you go to these courts. I mean, if you don't claim the ownership of your child, no wonder the state goes after you for child support. Because you're still under state authority because you never corrected your status or made sure that you were lawful or legal. And believe me, when judges and attorneys tell you that they're immune from a prosecution, that is a lie. I have the federal administrative rules and the court cases on that, and even prove it by the Judicial Fitness Committee. So long as that they did not violate your Constitution rights. Now, when you submit to the courts and you agree to the courts, that's not in violation because you're going under understanding that you know what you're doing. And that's why I always tell people when a judge says, do you understand? You understand nothing. You know, and good news, Ohio State has to pay back $3 million in unconstitutional speed traps because the speed cameras have been proven again the third time unconstitutional. But people need to go there, but they know that people are going to be paying instead of fighting them. And it's like when I was talking to Carson, the former Supreme Court for Oregon State. And he's like, you know, basically, we're bringing in $6 or $7 billion, and we pay $1 billion out in lawsuits. So what do you think? We're going to take the money. You know, I mean, and that's the point. And some of these guys are that honorable and honest with you when you really sit down and talk to them. And that's where, you know, I've even done that with the Department of Fish and Wildlife when I claimed my subsistence rights. Yeah, it's like you have to know your standing. And the other point to get into with the child issues, I want to make sure people comprehend this one. In the Ninth Circuit District Court, case number 15-55563, states clearly now, and it's finally been a federal Supreme Court decision, that DHS workers have to have a complete warrant written before they can enter your home or try to take your kid. And I'll be getting into that with warrants next week on that, because there's laws that say even if they have a warrant, they cannot trespass on private land. Doesn't mean they can't go on public land, but they cannot trespass on private land at all, even with a warrant. And this is the point to comprehend these things of what the truth is compared to what people think they are. And remember, people, when you go to court, a district attorney is a hearsay witness. And remember, all district attorney, judges, and lawyers and clerks cannot issue an affidavit, because they cannot do that, because only a living man or woman could create an affidavit. A public servant can't, and that is federal law. That is the point. And I do recommend everybody read their Sixth Amendment very well, because I put that out dealing with lawyers and judges in the legal system, with pretrial motions and how the Sixth Amendment applies in the pretrial motions and stuff. I don't like motions, and I'm always blunt about that, because the motion is a ship on a sea, and that is using your name or your circumstances as a vessel. And that's where, when you have a newborn child, you have to register your kids claim your kids to yourself, because then the state goes, that's a vessel, that's 30 days, so we can claim the vessel because you didn't claim it in 30 days. And that's one of the reasons how they get away with these things, to come in your home and take your children away. And that's so people don't get it. And a clerk, if the clerk does not file the paperwork correctly, I have the laws on that. You could actually file on a clerk for not filing your paperwork correctly. They can, in most cases, do go to jail when you prove it. That's why it's always handy to have a video or an audio tape when you go into these buildings and file. Your public employees will tell you, oh, you can't videotape us, or cops will tell you that. No, federal law says you can. And in Lincoln County, Oregon, I have literally two cases on record where people videotaped me in court where they arrested them. One was videotaped me where I proved the forestry department was committing damage on public land, and the state police arrested an associate of mine, and the jury came out, even by law, said that we have the right to videotape and tape all of our elected and public servants. And that is law. You can. And you can type in law, federal law on audio and videotaping your public servants, and it will come up. Go ahead.
I'm sending you a Wikipedia article on public order crimes. Okay. The reason I want to stress this, you need to get into the Military Manual 27-10. Okay? A military occupation. Administration of military occupation. In there it states, under military occupation, that their job is to restore and maintain public order. Right. So these public order crimes are coming out of the military manual. Okay? Now, given what I know right now that I believe is happening, a lot of these public order crimes are going to be going away. Because they can't hold them anymore. But you need to get into 27-10 and read that section on military occupation. And read what it says about public order and public order crimes. All right, this is where they're getting this stuff from. Now, I'm not making this stuff up. I wish to God, you can't make this stuff up in a story. All right, so there's the Wikipedia article on that. Okay.
Okay. And then having an oath of office, ask the judge if he or she does. It is the court's responsibility, lawful duty to protect my rights to due process and the right of impartial and distinct arbitrator. That's United States versus Lee, 106 U.S. 196.220, and this was done in 1882, due process of law. So, I mean, they were going through this back in the late 1800s. And all judges, and I've already brought it up, all judges and lawyers are registered under 28 U.S.C. 327, have to have a filed constitutional oath on record. That's 28 U.S.C. 372. And it has to be certified, not copied. You always want to see the wet ink one they got. They make copies and they get rid of the wet ink ones like they do with your manufacturer state of origin on your transportation. And I want to bring this up to people. Under U.S. Code, the president does have statutory authority to keep anyone out of this country for any reason if he thinks best. And this is 8 U.S.C. 1182. So when these Democrats are attacking Trump on these issues, he has the legal right. And remember, legal is British administrative rules versus constitutional law. And this 8 U.S.C. 1182 follows under the original Immigration Act of 1770. That's where people don't get it. They don't read this structure. And here's another one, seeing that we're dealing with religion. Dictionary of Law, 1893. Christians, the system dictarines, the precepts thought by Christ. In other words, people believe there's a Christ. That's their right under religion. The religion is founded by Christ. Christians is said to be part of the common law. Christianity is a parcel of the law of England, administrative statutes and administrative codes. So if you claim to be Christian, you're claiming that you have to go by the administrative statutes and administrative rules. Therefore, the reproach to the Christian religion is to speak subdivision of law. This is Taylor's case versus Ventris, 293, 1676 in England. So this is where I go off on people with England and all this stuff. The essential principle of a national religion, or natural religion, and revealed religion are part of common law, so that any person, remember the word person, that's an inanimate object, revealing or subverting or ridiculing them may be prosecuted at common law. That is case of Evans 2, Byrne, ECL 185, 1870, or 1780. I had that one backwards. 1780. The maximum can have no reference to the law of the national government, since the source of the national government is of Constitution treaties and acts of Congress. See, Wheaton versus Peters, 8 Pete 591, 1831. In reference of another one is common blasphemy policy 2, and that is religion. That is blasphemy policy of religion. That's why I don't claim religion affiliation or stuff like that, because when the minute you start doing that, you're giving authority over to the corporation. And that's why when this Miss Davis is going, I'm a Christian, well, you failed doing your job as a Christian, because as a Christian, you have administrative duties to the law, not your belief that you don't think that these people have a right. You know, I'm not going to argue that point, because, I mean, I grew up in San Francisco. I witnessed the gay communities growing up in the 70s and 80s, and back then they had more respect than the gays do today. They didn't go out and flaunt they were gay. They didn't go tell people they're gay. And if you actually paid attention growing up, you can see who was gay and who was not by their attitude, the way they walk, their body language. And these people are out there flaunting their gayism and their religion today. You know, that's the problem we have today. And Yeah, no, I love this one. The definition of hell, and I'm going to put that up. People got to read that. It's like they got pastors and ministers coming out going, hell was created by the church to control man and woman. And these are 40, 50-year-old pastors and preachers saying this. And I've always preached it because we're living hell today on this earth right now, because it even says in the Bible, hell is on earth and hell is on heaven. Hell is in earth as it is on heaven, and heaven is on earth. People don't get that. That's what's frustrating. Am I still on? Did I lose something? It sounded like somebody clicked.
I can tell. I mean, everything seems to be going good.
Okay, no problem. So I'm putting some of this other point right now up on the Facebook pages so people can see this, and thank you, Southern, for sending this. And this is the definition. And people got to start paying attention when they go into these courts and they're preaching what they consider is the Bible or the religion in courts. You're going into the court of religion. You're going into the devil's playhouse. You're literally going in the devil's playhouse, and then you want to go tell the devil how he's running his playhouse? That's what really stuns me with people, because they don't comprehend the facts. They don't comprehend what the courts are. They go in and thinking that the courts are supposed to do this, they're supposed to do that. And like I read, yeah, the courts are supposed to do this, but the main point on it, you have to inform the court of how they're going to operate. It is your responsibility and duty to do it correctly. That's why, you know, some of the things with the Bundy situation, what they did. Now they filed a wrongful death claim. Now are they going to file real criminal charges? Because the only one who can file criminal charges is the injured man and woman and children. That's the point nobody gets. The injured parties can file the criminal complaints. A judge and attorney cannot do that. That's what people don't get with the court system. They think that these people are there to help them and save them. They're out to just have a job. They don't care about you. They don't care about your children. They don't care about your bloodline. They don't care about your family. They just don't care. And as soon as men and women start accepting this reality of fact that when you go into these courts, yes, you want to be respectful. You want to be honorable. You don't want to yell and scream at the judge. And I've got videotapes of me where I'm telling the judge off. And then he tells me to get out of the courtroom. It's like, of course, I'm telling him off that he doesn't have the right to do this, and this is the way it is. And, you know, and I got a room full of people, and he doesn't want people to hear this, so he tells me to get the hell out. Because he doesn't want people to know the truth when they get traffic violation tickets or these things that they go through. And that's the main problem, the sad part about this. It's like on the Recall Kate Brown Facebook page, I got a letter on that from the tax people itself. Hang on a minute. I'll actually read this letter. It's very informative what the tax structure is. I mean, I was blessed by getting information from different people around the country, and I have this letter, and it's called Internal Revenue Service. And this is Department of Treasury that issued this, dealing with all district directors of Department of Revenue, April 4th, 1985. On March 5th, 1985, a charge of tax evasion was filed on the United States District Court. Let me say that. A charge of tax evasion was filed on the United States District Court in Indianapolis, Indiana, by the United States District Attorney George Duncan. The charge was dismissed. The defense attorney, Loyal B. Craft. Oh, everybody's heard of Loyal B. Craft. Of Huntsville, Alabama, presented infutable evidence that the 16th Amendment to the United States Constitution was never ratified. Was never properly ratified. This amendment, which established the income tax, was signed into law despite the serious defects in relation only to 2 states that have ratified the amendment. But it requires 36 states to be valid. So 2 out of 36 states only ratified the tax deal, so it never went any better. Word. The effect of this is such that every taxpayer in the Treasury since 1913 is due a refundable to every citizen in business. The official position of this service is that he has always been to aid and assist the citizens of the United States. Will we not publish and advertise this finding as a total immunity refund would cause a serious drain on the resources of the Treasury. For this, citizens who become aware of this finding, who apply for total refunds, expedite their refund documents as quickly as possible. For example, a 1040-X form will sufficiently until the new tax form is designed and printed. Advise your managers that they are not to discuss this situation with anyone. There will be no written communications, and there will be no destroying this memoranda. The Secretary of Treasury assures me that there will be no reductions in the workforce, as refundable activities will take a minimum of 5 years to complete. Further directives will be forwarded and need arise. So this is where people don't get where Beecraft did this wonderful thing for the people when he fought this court case. This was a letter that the Department of Treasury put out to the Internal Revenue Service after Larry Lowell Beecraft's case. So it is very important to comprehend these things. That's why I said taxes are voluntary. When you pay taxes, it doesn't go for your local water, fire department, or anything like that. It doesn't do that at all. That money goes into the coffers, to the Vatican, and to the Queen of England. That's part of the treaty that they had when the company went bankrupt, because the only ones that are obligated to pay taxes to pay the debt is immigration, elected and public servants, registered voters, and church members that are registered. That's what I try to get through people to comprehend how this works compared to the way people think it is. Trust me, I don't do this stuff in the system. I don't participate. And they keep trying to drag me in all the time. I'm working on an issue right now. They try to drag me in again. And so that ain't going to work. And they know it, but they keep trying. And that's what I'm saying. You never when the word understanding means that you stand underneath somebody when they tell you, do you understand? Understand. I understand under you. I'm beneath you. You're above me. The word comprehend means, okay, I might get it, but doesn't mean I have to deal with it. So it comes down to wording. Would that be fair to say, Southern? I guess he's not there. Oh, there you are.
I had myself on mute.
Oh, okay. But you get my point. You see the facts, don't you?
Yeah, but let me say something there. Hold on a minute. You need to get a copy of Bouvier's Maxims of Law.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hold on a second. Let me find.
No, let me see what you quote me to Bouvier and give me the page number because I have one. And I'll look it up because I know Black Law even says that you're not liable.
Okay. Bouvier's has a maximum law. Okay? I'm not going to give you the Latin term. The English term is, one is not present unless he understands. All right? And I've been in court, done this, and when they look at you and say, do you understand the charges brought against you? I one time said no. I said, I don't. Would somebody please explain them to me? The judge turned right around and issued a warrant for my arrest for not being present in court. that was standing right there in front of me. That was way back in the 90s. Then's when I found out the definition of understand. Okay? When they bring you in these courts, they can't charge you with a crime. They're not charging you. They're not giving you a charging instrument. All right? And yes, they're using trick words. All right? And that's one of them. You literally have to go in there, stand before the judge, and say yes, and volunteer in these military tribunals, these administrative courts, and that's how they trick you. All right, you have to put the proper paperwork in before you go into that courtroom. All right, demanding the charging instrument.
And always line and number the papers.
Huh?
I always line and number them, because then that way, if the judge says something, well, on page so-and-so, number so-and-so, does it say this? And I always learned that you do it on front and back, so that way when they flip the paper, they can't say they didn't see it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. But a lot, like I said, a lot of these people, when you got to go down, I got to get this guy's video for you. Because he walks you through a traffic court and most courts and gives you the law, where it's at, everything they're doing. So I got to see if that video is still out there, because I think they removed it. And I'll get it to you, okay, Ed?
Okay.
All right.
I think I might know which one you're talking about.
The guy from the military?
Yeah, I think I might know. I think I might have that in one of my archives.
Oh, if you got it.
But see if you can find it too.
But you need to you need to look up that Maxwell law. One is not present unless he understands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that.
No problem. No, that's the whole point. You got a valid point there. Is you don't want to say you don't you want to say you don't understand. Because the minute you say you understand, you put yourself right in their jurisdiction.
Well, what he's asking you, all right, and I got this little secret told to me by somebody. They don't want to hand you a charging instrument. They know the law that this stuff doesn't apply to you unless you're in the military, okay, and you're in the state militia, all right? So they don't really want to hand you a charging instrument. So they trick you into going in the courtroom and charging yourself by saying, yes, I understand the charge. Well, then, how do you plead? All right, he just got you right there. You follow what I'm saying? He's tricked you.
Right.
And I don't care what court you're in, Florida, California, Ohio, it doesn't matter. They all use the same thing because that's their little trick. All right? And what you got to do is is put a paperwork in, a document in, because there's case law out there on, hold on one second. All right?
Yep.
It's called real notice. Okay? You have to be given real notice. All right? To make a decision on whether you're guilty or innocent. And you have to be told the elements of the crime. All right? Before you can make a plea. They don't want to do this because they are fully aware of the fact that these statutes you're being brought in under do not apply to you. So they trick you this way into walking in and say, yes, I understand the charges. Well, you just said, yes, I got real notice and I, understand the elements of the crime that I committed. Then he looks at you and says, are you guilty? How do you plead? He's got you. Okay? They got you. Right there. I'll have to send you my memorandum of law charging instrument.
Okay, yeah, and also too, so people comprehend, I'm going to be putting this on the wall, and we'll get it on the on new.org trackers. Ex parte Milligan is 71 US 2 4 wall 1866.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be sending that out, putting it on the Facebook pages as well as sending it out to so we could get that put up. So people get that, so this way they can do it. And that was a key case by the American Bar Association as well. And remember, the American Bar Association was founded August 21st, 1787. And it's very important because on their face page of the American Bar Association, it does say that all attorneys and judges are took an oath to the Queen of England and the King of England. It actually says it. So, but go ahead what you were saying.
Okay, you want to look up, I'm going to give you some other Bible. Okay? Romans 4:15. Because of law worketh wrath. For where no law is, there is no transgression. This is what they're operating these courts on out here. When they ask you the question, all right, do you understand the charges? There is no law that they can charge you with. There's not really a transgression. So what they're doing is tricking you into volunteering into accepting some big charge. Because when you're standing in that courtroom, you've not been handed a charging instrument. So the judge is saying, how do you plead? For what, are you pleading to a jaywalking offense? Or are you pleading to first-degree murder? You don't know. Because you have never been handed a true charging instrument and had the elements of crime explained to you. This is all, like I said, this all in the laws of war, on the military side of this. They understand ex parte McMilligan. They have to trick you.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. What was that? Romans what, 15?
Huh?
You said Romans something 15.
Romans 4:15. Okay.
I'm missing. Are you saying Romans 4:15 or 4:15?
4:15.
4 as in the number 4?
4 as in the number 4.
Oh, okay. That's what I put out in my deal. I have the comic strip that got a guy calling into jail that says the judge goes to the guy going, don't you realize that me and your minister or me and the pastor are the one and the same?
All right, I'm going to give you another maximum law. Inter arma, and then my silent. I'm not even going to go to Latin term. What it means is, for among arms, the laws fall mute. Right? In times of war, the laws fall silent. So since we've been under that's why we've been under the Lieber Code since 1861. Right? When this war got started, the Civil War, that never ended until recently, the laws have all been silent. That's why we're using public order crimes. Okay? Because the laws don't exist anymore. Nothing does. What happens in a war, right, is you lay down your civil law, okay, and you take up the law of war. The civil law is still sitting there, and everybody's always going at civil law, all right? The statutes, codes, and ordinances. But right now, until we straighten this mess out, we're still operating under the laws of war, which is the Geneva Convention, okay, and the Lieber Code. Now, when the war is over, you lay down your military law, and you pick back up your civil law. This is what I think they're working on right now. That's why Paul Ryan said that 5 times that they were going to reinstate the Constitution. I'm going to send you my memorandum of law of charging over to you so that you can read it and put it out there, okay?
Okay, and then I want to get into this because a prosecutor is a 16th century term created for Roman courts and comes from 2 Latin terms, being pro se, meaning for one's own behalf, and cutis, skin, flesh. Hence, pro se cutis is literally means on behalf of one's own skin or behalf to de-son, tort, or simply false beneficiary. The false beneficiary seeking to create the security instrument and blood in case a matter with your ignorance and presumed guilt, irrespectively of the truth. The fact of law, they can win. You lose. No justice isn't just business. That's why when when these attorneys and stuff say, well, you lost, it's only just business. Because remember, it is a business that they're into. We are under the opinion that a clear distinction in this particular between an individual and a corporation, and the letter has no right to refuse submitted books and papers for examination. That means also, too, when you're doing your instruments, if you bound it like a book, they cannot throw it away. Examination of the suit of state, and that means capital state. An individual may stand upon the constitutional right as a citizen. He is entitlement to carry his private business in his own way. His power conducts is unlimited. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors, to his receive nothing therefrom. Beyond the protection of his life and property, his rights are such extinguished by the law and is land long. Antecedent to the organization of the state can and only be taken from him by due process of law in accordance with the Constitution. He owes nothing to the public so long as he does not trespass on their individual rights. Individual may lawfully refuse any answer of a crimination question unless protected by an immunity statute, and that is Hale versus Hinkle, U.S. 43, page 74, 1903. So, go ahead. I'll get this one posted here in a minute. So I just got that one from you, and I'll get that one passed. So, but it is very important to read this stuff, folks. That's what it is. And that's what I say when it comes to people. You got to take everybody's thoughts and opinions or what they're saying and research it. Don't take one man or woman's opinion and go off on it. Don't sit there and claim it. You have to research it so that way you know the truth. You know the facts. You have to live with the facts. You have to live with the circumstances that are caused by you standing up for yourself or by you standing by somebody else. You have to take liability, and it's all based on liability. You know, that's why when a state takes your child and says, oh, it's a liability, well, they're taking your assets from that child as well. And that's what they hope to do. They really want to take your liability rights. And that's where people do not comprehend how simple that truth really is. So, okay, I'm getting that one put up here in a second. And I'll get that one passed on. But like I said, the whole thing comes down to proper education and knowledge. And it's up to you to educate your children. Don't rely on the school district. Because the school district ain't going to tell you the truth, because they took civics. When I went to school in California, they took the last year of civics out of the school in 1980. And when I was in civics, literally in the school in 1980, they actually taught the legal definition of Constitution, called the Republic, and democracy of the legal system. They did that in high school. So that is the one thing that people don't comprehend, that you got that. You got. So anyhow, go ahead. You wanted to say something else. I'll let you go.
No, I'm okay. I'm looking at something right now for you.
So I'm getting that one sent out. I want to make sure that people comprehend what he's saying. And this is out of the Bouvier Dictionary, published 1856, called Charging Instrument. And it is very important to read this stuff.
I can tell you the judge I put it before didn't like it.
Oh, I could comprehend that one. And like I said, there are simple ways to win your court cases. But the one thing is, when you do personal and property damage to a man, woman, child, or property, you are liable. That's where they walk across that border and they say, now we got you. And I'm still looking for the laws that say, I know there's a few laws that say they can't, but they cannot go after you unless you made personal arrangements with that individual, man, woman, or child, to compensate for the damages. And that one is a real fact, and I do know that one. I have dealt with that in the court system with people who have done injured property damage and personal injury, where they had to go pay it off and make amends, and it kept the court out of them. It kept the court out of their system for it. And that is the main point, is you want to keep the courts out of your life. And is knowing how to do it in a responsible manner. That's the main point. If you're responsible when you go in front of the judge, an actor, wearing a black robe, why do you think they wear a black robe? Black robe singles the death. Black robe means death. And that's one thing most people do not comprehend what the damn thing means. It means death. That's like when you sign in black ink. That's why when I go in and I always sign in red ink, and I'll put my thumbprint in red on instruments and on paperwork for medical and stuff. And I go, why do you do that? Well, I'm reserving my rights, and I know it was done in red ink. And most of the time, the hospital gives me back the original paperwork. They give me back the original paperwork, and they make a copy, and I leave with the original paperwork. So it is comprehending how these things work, because remember, a hospital until 1973, they could not charge you hospital fees as they do today. And technically, they still can't charge you hospital fees because by federal law, they have to provide medical attention. And I always love when people say, well, it doesn't say that in the Constitution. Well, if I'm not mistaken, the Constitution starts off life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what I comprehend out of it, so why wouldn't it apply? People don't put one and one together and do those things and think about those things. It's already paid for in the tax structure. That is the one thing that people do not get, how it's paid in the tax structure already. It was filed and paid with property taxes. When people pay their property taxes, it's right in the property tax structure. And the hospitals in, what was that, 1994. That's when they started rewriting property taxes and changing property taxes names throughout the system. So that way they could put property taxes for the hospital in another funding. And that's one thing people do not know, that property taxes, when you pay property tax, there is a percentage that goes in for the hospital, the ambulance, emergency vehicles, called helicopters for life flight. That's not for the police department. It's only for emergency medical services to save life. And that's where people have got to see how that works compared to the way they think it works. So, anyhow, it's 7 o'clock now. We've been on for 2 hours. You have anything that you wanted to add before I decided to call it an evening?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay, well, we're going to call it an evening tonight. I want to thank you all for joining us. And like I said, next Saturday, we're going to get into the Uniform Commercial Codes, because I got stuff that is going to be very interesting that's from the Black Law Dictionary how these administrative rules did, how the UCC code came into existence in the United States, and when it became in the existence in the court systems. So, and that's by their system stating this. So I'm going to be bringing that up so people can sit there and comprehend the facts that is stated by them, not us. So they wrote it. We, the lawful bloodline Americans, we quote the organic Constitution to protect our rights. If we don't protect our rights, there is no future for your children, your bloodline, and your ancestry. With that, I would like to say, may the great spirits and Mother Earth bless you, and the Creator look over you.
All right. Have a good one, Ed.
Okay. Thank you for listening to Education by Ed. It is evidently it's Stupid Bowl, but it is February 4th, 2018. Catch us next week at Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with the disclaimers by Ed Johnston. And the same time next week for this show, Education by Ed. Thank you very much, and have a good night.